Hi guys, I'm Vishnu, an officer with the Indian Revenue Service. Right now, I'm on a sabbatical, spending this time exploring Europe while also focusing on music, reading, health, and family. This channel is where I share those experiences and journeys with you. Today, I'm at The Hague, or Den Haag as the Dutch call it. Unlike Amsterdam or Rotterdam, The Hague has never tried to be the biggest or flashiest city, but it has always been the seat of power in Netherlands. The story of The Hague begins in the 13th century when Count Floris IV of Holland bought land here and built a hunting lodge. His son, Count William II, expanded it into a proper residence, and that's how the Binnenhof, still the political heart of the country, was born. Interestingly, The Hague was never granted full city rights in the Middle Ages, so technically it was a village for centuries. Yet this village became the center of Dutch politics, home to the States General, the monarchy, and later the Dutch government. In the 17th century, during the Dutch Golden Age, The Hague flourished as the place where ambassadors, statesmen, and scholars gathered. While Amsterdam traded across the world, The Hague built institutions that governed that trade. Fast forward to modern times. The Hague became known as the International City of Peace and Justice. It hosts the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, and more than 200 international organizations. From a medieval hunting lodge to a global stage for diplomacy, The Hague's journey has been one of quite immense influence. And that is what makes this city different. It doesn't shout with skyscrapers or commerce, but it holds the authority of centuries. My first stop here in The Hague is Mauritshuis, a jewel of Dutch art history. It sits right next to the Binnenhof, on the Hofwijver Lake, almost blending political power with cultural prestige. The Mauritshuis was built in the 17th century as the residence of Johann Maurits of Nassau, governor of Dutch Brazil. The elegant design is by Jacob van Kampen and Peter Post, masters of Dutch classicist architecture. But behind its stately facade lies a more complex story. Johann Maurits's wealth and much of what financed this mansion came from colonial ventures, including sugar plantations in Brazil and the transatlantic slave trade. So the beauty of this building is also a reminder of the costs borne elsewhere in the world. Today, though Mauritshuis is celebrated as one of the finest art museums in Europe, it holds masterpieces by Rembrandt, Hals, and Steen. But its crown jewel and the biggest draw for visitors is Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring, often called the Dutch Mona Lisa. Standing before it, people feel the same mystery and intimacy that has fascinated the world for centuries. The painting itself has become a symbol of The Hague, drawing art lovers from across the globe. So, in one building, you find layers of history, aristocratic ambition, colonial entanglements, and today cultural reverence. That is the story of Mauritshuis and why it's an unmissable stop here in The Hague. As I climb up to the first floor, you can really appreciate the layout of Mauritshuis. The building is compact, just two main floors, but designed with perfect balance and proportion. Each floor has a series of rooms arranged around a central hall, creating an intimate atmosphere, almost like you are walking through a grand house rather than a vast museum. This was deliberate since it was originally built as a private residence. Now those same rooms host some of the world's most treasured artworks, making the experience feel both personal and historic at the same time. The first work I see as I reach the top of the stairs is this striking still life by Abraham Mignon. A lavish bouquet of flowers bursts out of the dark background, each petal painted with almost lifelike precision. It's beautiful but also symbolic, a reminder of how fragile and fleeting life can be. I step into the grand hall. On the walls, Gerrit van Honthorst's mythological scenes link Maurits with strength and authority. Between them, Caesar van Everdingen's calm allegories, justice, prudence, underline virtuous rule. Even the ceiling joins in, a deity raising through the cloud, lifting the message skyward. And through the window, the Hofwijver serene water besides all this grandeur. In these next rooms, the story of art changes with every wall. Here we see Johann Maurits himself, painted in grand style, armor, sash, and a confident pose. Portraits like this were not just about likeness, they were statements of power and prestige. Next to him are paintings that remind us of the colonial past, wealthy sitters portrayed with black attendants. These works reveal how Dutch society once displayed wealth and status by showing connections to overseas trade, but they also remind us of the inequality and slavery that made such images possible. As I move further, the room opens into a mix of landscapes and portraits. Dutch landscapes were usually small and detailed, flat horizons, skies full of light. They reflected pride in the Dutch countryside and often carried moral lessons about simplicity and humility. Portraits, on the other hand, were bold and direct. The faces of the artist wanted the sitter's personality to come through, showing both wealth and character. In other sections, you can see earlier Renaissance style paintings, more decorative, with figures in rich robes, almost like they stepped out of a medieval storybook. These works connect the Hague to the wider European tradition before the Golden Age fully matured. And the real highlight of the first floor is this very painting, Potter's Young Bull. Oversized, detailed, and now under restoration, it remains one of the most iconic works in the entire Mauritshuis. As we climb up to the second floor, you will notice the layout feels very similar to below. A central hall surrounded by smaller rooms. Once again, don't forget to look up. Even the ceilings here are richly painted, part of the original 17th century decoration. But the real highlight on this floor, and perhaps of the entire museum, is Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring. Painted around 1665, it's not a portrait in the usual sense. We don't know who the girl was. Instead, Vermeer created what's called a trony, a study of a face in exotic costume, meant to capture expression and light rather than identity. What makes it extraordinary is its simplicity. The dark background, the soft light on her skin, and the turn of her head, and of course, that single luminous pearl. Vermeer painted fewer than 40 works in his lifetime, and this is among the most famous. For centuries, the painting remained little known until it was rediscovered in the 19th century. Since then, it has become a cultural icon, the so-called Dutch Mona Lisa, admired for both its mystery and its intimacy. Here we see Diana and her Nymphs by Vermeer again. Painted around 1653, this early work shows the goddess Diana being tended to by her companions. Notice how the figures are calm, introspective, almost sacred in tone, very different from the lively Dutch genre scenes we usually associate with Vermeer. And just beside it, a very different mood, The Merry Family by Jan Steen. Here laughter, music, and wine fill the room. Steen's message, however, is double-edged. Beneath the cheerful chaos lies a moral warning against excess. Look at the children mimicking the adults, a playful yet satirical reminder that indulgence is easily passed on to the next generation. Now we come to Rembrandt Van Rijn, one of the greatest masters of the Dutch Golden Age. Born in Leiden in 1606, he made Amsterdam his home, where his bold use of light and shadow, the famous chiaroscuro, transformed portraiture and storytelling on canvas. Rembrandt painted over 90 self-portraits across his lifetime. They act like a visual diary from his youthful confidence to the vulnerability of his later years. Few artists have left us such an intimate record of their own face and emotions, and this is here in Mauritshuis for us to see. One of his most famous works is the Anatomy Lesson of Dr. Nicolaas Tulp, painted in 1632. It was revolutionary, not just a group portrait, but a dramatic scene where knowledge, science, and mortality meet under Rembrandt's theatrical light. Here at the Mauritshuis, we also see masterpieces like Simeon's Song of Praise and his moving portraits. Each reveals his genius in capturing the soul of his subjects, whether biblical, mythical, or everyday citizens of Amsterdam. Once I completed my visit to the Mauritshuis, I decided to head towards Scheveningen, the seaside district of The Hague. The tram ride itself is an experience. It takes you past The Hague's quiet neighborhoods, tree-lined streets, and glimpses of everyday Dutch life before gradually opening up towards the coast. I arrived at Scheveningen, and it is the city's famous beach lying right on the shores of the North Sea, a coastline known for its powerful winds and restless waves. But Scheveningen isn't just about leisure. During World War II, it played a curious role in the fight against German occupation. Dutch resistance fighters used the word Scheveningen itself as a password. Native Dutch speakers could pronounce the tricky sk sound easily, but German spies often failed, and that slip of tongue was enough to expose them. At Scheveningen, history and sea come together, a place of relaxation today, but once a stage for clever resilience during darker times. From the beach, the first landmark that catches your eye is the Grand Kurhaus Resort. Built in the late 19th century, it began as a luxury bathing house and concert hall, attracting Europe's elite. Even today, its ornate facade dominates the promenade, reminding visitors of the era when seaside leisure became fashionable. Just beside it, the pier stretches into the North Sea. At the far end stands the Ferris wheel, the first ever built over the sea in Europe. From its cabins, you get sweeping views of the coastline, the city, and the vast waters stretching endlessly to the horizon. But this is no gentle sea. The North Sea is colder and windier than what we are used to back home near the Arabian Sea. The winds here blow almost constantly, making this coast one of the best places in the world for harnessing wind energy. You can see the offshore wind turbines rising from the water, today's Dutch windmills, capturing the sea's power and turning threat into resource. And with the strong winds, the cold waters, and rhythm of the waves, Scheveningen's pier becomes more than just a holiday spot. It is a reminder of how the Dutch live with the sea, sometimes battling it, sometimes harnessing it, but always adapting to it. The day was ending. By the time I left Scheveningen, it was already around 8 pm, and I decided to head back to Rotterdam. That is another thing about this season. The sun lingers here until almost 10 pm, stretching the evenings and giving you more time to wander. I took the tram through the Hague's quiet neighborhoods. Rows of red brick houses slid past, wide windows glowing with warm lights inside, and cyclists still pedal home as if the day was far from over. Everything moves at an unhurried pace. From the metro, the city slowly gave way to the Dutch countryside. Flat green fields opened up, stitched with canals that mirrored the fading sky. Solitary farmhouses dotting the horizon, and wind turbines spinning steadily in the breeze. The calm was striking, a soft counterpoint to the art, history, and sea winds I had experienced today. And with that, my day in The Hague comes to a close. But this isn't the last time we will be here. I'll return again to explore the Peace Palace and other landmarks. Until then, the journey continues tomorrow.